All right, we are back with more NFL coverage, and in this one, I'll be covering the developments from Week 11. So to get straight into it, Bengals rookie edge rusher Shemar Stewart will be placed on IR. It's just a tough go around for him all the way through, to be completely honest. I mean, we know how chaotic the offseason was in terms of him even getting his contract, and he's only recently appeared in just a few games this season. The defense as a whole has largely been underwhelming, and as a result, he himself has not really produced a whole bunch when you look at just the numbers. Now, again, I'm not able to watch every single Bengals game live, so there's a chance that he may honestly be putting together some decent progress, and the numbers just aren't showing it. But nevertheless, unfortunately, he's going to miss even more time due to this injury. So I would hope that he's able to get back out there, but given that you're typically out for a minimum of 4 games here, and with the season winding down at that point, I don't know if they would be as comfortable with activating him, depending on how severe this injury looks to be right now. Moving on to some different and even more unfortunate news here. On Saturday, it'll be detailed that Seahawks legend Kenny Easley would pass away at the age of 66, as multiple articles state, including this Sports Illustrated one. And, man, just a tough loss to hear about here. But as this article from Fox Sports, or at least Fox-based channel in Seattle, I should say, states this: the Pro Football Hall of Fame has announced that Easley died on Friday, November 15th, after years of battling health issues. Kenny always gave his all and held the game in his life at the highest standard, his wife, Gail, told the Hall of Fame on Saturday, end quote. To this point, we haven't heard anything more necessarily surrounding what might have led to his passing. So that'll definitely be something that will need to be kind of revealed as time goes along here. But, I mean, we can only assume that this was natural causes to this point, without any further explanation into the matter, honestly. No matter how you slice it, though, as they kind of allude to with this, he's leaving behind a good number of family and other close friends of his, potentially others that he got to know over some years. It was just, it was tough to hear about. Because, I mean, even without being a person who was able to watch him play, like, you definitely heard about him being an all-time legend for the team. I mean, even as this quote says right here, via the organization themselves on Sports Illustrated article right here, quote, Kenny embodied what it meant to be a Seahawk through his leadership, toughness, intensity, and fearlessness, Seattle said in a statement. His intimidating nature and athletic grace made him one of the best players of all time, end quote. It goes much deeper than football, but when you look at where he did this on the field work, like, you don't have people saying anything negative about nothing but the utmost praise. And it just makes you look back on it with some things that I have seen about him in posts. You're just like, hey, I mean, that's definitely remarkable stuff to say the least. Like, he definitely touched a lot of different lives outside of the realm of football. But, man, when he was out there on the field, the contributions were grand. The presence alone that he had on the team. When you reference how tough he was, these articles state at different points that he was known and recognized as one of the hardest hitting safeties in the NFL at the time of his play. And to think that his career in and of itself was short in nature, just 7 seasons, but still enough in that time to become a Hall of Famer in 2017 with that class. You look at these numbers across his career, and for a stretch of years in a row, like, he was a force to be reckoned with. We're talking about 4 straight Pro Bowls, 3 straight All-Pro first-team selections, an Defensive Player of the Year award, the first and only player in Seahawks history to win it after a 1984 season in which he had 10 interceptions and 2 pick sixes, along with a fumble recovery. And I guess I'm sure he had a number of different tackles, but when you look at it here, I suppose that tackles were not necessarily tracked. So that's kind of unfortunate when you look at it that way. But nevertheless, man, truly an all-around player. And his career could have taken a much more drastic turn. In fact, it did. This Sports Illustrated article goes on to mention that he was actually on the path to being traded. As this quote says right here, in April 1988, the Seahawks tried to trade Easley to the Cardinals, only for doctors to diagnose him with nephrotic syndrome, a kidney disease, during his physical. He retired after just 7 years, but his short career in the league was still enough to get him elected to the Hall of Fame in 2017. End quote. Like, that is how it goes when these trades go through, and we've seen how different trades in other sports, namely this year in the NBA when the Mark Williams trade fell through due to a failed physical, allegedly. You have those kinds of situations where if you don't pass that, the team can definitely take a second look and just have a little bit of caution as to accepting the deal or not. Happens all the time. Thankfully, in Easley's case, you're confronting kidney failure here. They turned him away, but it ended up being the right decision. Unfortunately, it forced him out of football at the young age of 28. And I'm sure he had a lot more that he wanted to provide to the game. But health was much more important at that point of time. And while, they say that he struggled with health for a while, I mean, to his credit, the fact that his career ended all that time ago, different health problems might have been ailing him, and to this point, the man still has lived out a pretty long and fruitful life in any other different ways, and was still regarded as being that good for that time that he got the highest honor, or one of the highest honors, that an NFL player can receive when it comes to their service in the NFL. It's wild to think about, man. His personality wasn't lost on other Seahawks that came through the organization. They got a long quote, this Fox Space Seattle news program, from Walter Jones himself, obviously a legend at the left tackle position in the organization. And he says, as this whole thing states, quote, I'm an animal of watching people and how they move. And I definitely enjoyed the way that he moved and the way he wanted to change the community. And I think a lot of guys want to do that. And that's why I come here and be a part of this, because you want to change the community and help the community. You go back and watch those guys on film, and they're doing it the same way, competing real hard and going out there and leaving it out on the field. And Kenny was definitely a guy that left it out on the field. Jones continued, end quote. Couldn't say it any better myself in this regard. Truly. Maybe for him there was no more left to give with this unexpected health issue. But there was never a doubt that he didn't give 110% maximum effort on every single one of these plays. And along with the skill that he possessed, carrying over from his time at UCLA as a 3-time consensus All-American, as this article also states, he truly had a great NFL career and a great life to many of them, whether it be his relatives or other people that he associated with over time. They can't say that Kenny Easley was not ultimately a great person before you even get into all of the football stuff. So, again, unfortunate news coming out there. Even with this statement, I'm sure the Seahawks will find some way to try to hold a tribute for him in one of their next few games, probably when they return home. I'm pretty sure the Titans game is a home game, if I'm not mistaken. But it'll be interesting to look out for that and see what transpires there. And I mean, it would make sense. Kenny Easley is one of 4 players, as these articles state, in Seahawks history to currently have their jersey numbers retired right now. That could probably change in some time, but to be up there with his jersey in the rafters amongst a few other all-time greats in Seahawks history, I mean, that tells you everything that you need to know right there. But I think it's interesting to see that potential trade fall through and result in the end of his career. I mean, that just shows you right there that, even with things looking great for him, man, unexpected qualities sometimes just go down, and there is not much you can really control there, but you have to find different ways to adjust. And for a number of decades afterwards, he certainly found a way to, and then some. So, even if he was dealing with health problems, man, he still fought for long enough and ultimately was able to experience a good amount in his lifetime. And that's a beautiful thing, even if you get those news here. All right, moving on to a few injuries here. Sam LaPorta would be placed on IR and is going to miss the next few games and some change. He's already was out for the Lions-Eagles game, and he'll miss at least 3 more depending on some reevaluations. J.K. Dobbins had a foot injury. And then Adam Schefter would also detail that he would be out for the rest of the season after foot surgery for this problem. Unfortunate for J.K. Dobbins there. He had been putting together a solid year for them as their lead back in Denver. And to have it end in that way as they potentially gear up for a playoff run, it definitely stings from that aspect. Hopefully he can rest up and recover. It would also be interesting to see how the Broncos game plan around that, because you never know. Milton Williams would also be placed on IR and is set to miss the next few games, as he would miss the Eagles game. But with the way that defense had been playing and the amount of depth that they already... Well, no, whoa. Pats, jeez. Yeah, he played well in that game, but ended up going out a little earlier with injury. So that was definitely tough on them. But the Patriots defense was still good enough. And I think that for at least the next few games, they can actually manage to be without his services. Like, they have guys who can pick up the slack for him. Even if Williams came in as a free agent and easily took the starting job at D-tackle. The backups aren't necessarily scrubs for the team, but when you had a full season of relying on those guys, that's what resulted in the Patriots being as underwhelming as they were last season and towards the bottom of the league. The Bills would sign Mecole Hardman Jr. to the practice squad, but would also rule him out for the game against the Texans. Keon Coleman was also inactive for the game against the Bucks on Sunday, but I would say that this was a DNP. Schefter mentioned in the initial report that he apparently missed a meeting, a team meeting early in the week. Now, again, I can't really speculate as to what exactly he was doing while this was happening. But you better show up there. And again, just like how many... Is this, as I already mentioned, in the game recaps, like, he wasn't even the only one getting in trouble for this shit. Like, what are we doing? Especially if you're the Bills, man, you are in a... Like, you're in the long haul for this season. You're trying your absolute hardest to get to the playoffs right now. That kind of shit, that kind of... I'm not going to say attitude, but that you just can't afford that kind of shit right now, man. Everybody in that locker room needs to be in high gear right now. Like, you gotta be ready and stay ready in these situations, because that is how you lose steam, and you don't want to be losing steam down the stretch of a year heading into a postseason. That shit never ends well. It's always about who heats up at the right times when we get into the playoffs. And the Bills want to keep that going for damn sure. Yeah, it might be one simple missed meeting, but that can't happen. They have to make an example out of Keon Coleman. And it's been interesting for him this entire season. Like, it's just, I don't know. People were expecting him to emerge as the number one guy. He hasn't necessarily reached that point yet, to be honest with you. And having stuff like that go down makes the situation even worse. So I can't be surprised at them doing that. But hopefully he gets his stuff together. You gotta be on your shit. You can't be doing all that, man. Alright, moving on to a different situation here. And granted, per Adam Schefter and also a few other NFL insiders, we have undergone some newer developments about this situation. But it is worth understanding the full context of the matter here. Initially, a few days back on Sunday, it would be detailed that Kris Boyd, the special teamer for the New York Jets, was actually the victim of a shooting outside of a restaurant in New York. As this quote from an article from Rich Shimony states, Boyd, 29, was shot outside the restaurant after a dispute turned violent, with the gunman firing 2 shots, the New York Post reported, citing law enforcement sources. The shooter fled the scene in a BMW X8 SUV, according to the newspaper. A Mercedes-Benz Maybach also fled the scene, the newspaper reported, end quote. There are other reports that mention essentially he was at a kind of, I think it was referred to as like a Asian fusion restaurant in that area of the city at this particular time. Again, who's to say he was up to anything in there? I'm sure he was just sitting down, chilling, trying to take a bite of some food. They don't mention other details. I believe from everything I've seen that he was quite literally just by himself, trying to have a nice time out. Not really trying to be up to anything at all. Just trying to have a fair enough time for himself. And you had a situation, I guess, as he was leaving, I would believe, where he's approached by this person, and I guess we don't even really know what the conversation was about. We don't even know what the motive was for this particular gunman shooting at him. But all we know is that right now, one thing escalated into something far more violent. And it left Kris Boyd in dire straits. Initially, the report was that he was in critical but stable condition. And it got to a point even where, from a video that I was watching from Flemwell Raps, I think, there was something talking about he was with the path of the bullets, the way in which they had to go about removing them in the areas in which they were located in his body. I think he was just like a few inches or so away from legitimately losing his life. It was that bad. Okay. So you're hearing all that initially. Any family that's close to him, first and foremost. A lot of different stuff probably running through their mind at this point. And that would ring true for everyone in the Jets organization, especially when it came down to the players. This AP article and this ESPN article mention multiple quotes and posts, one of which came from Jermaine Johnson II, sending his condolences and asking for prayers for Kris Boyd on social media. You also had Harrison Phillips, who, as this report goes on to state, actually played with Kris Boyd in Minnesota beforehand, giving a quote about his initial thoughts in the situation, just being grateful that he was in stable condition. And same thing for Jeremy Ruckert here, the Ohio State tight end, giving other prayers to Kris Boyd as well. Like, you're in the same locker room as the man, and we've already seen how a locker room can be affected, per se, when the worst happens. Unfortunately, or earlier this month, with the Marshawn Kneeland situation. Different context. There was no one making an attempt on his life in any malicious way, per se. Like this situation could be, depending on what exactly led to the shooting in the first place, in terms of a motive, which again, we don't have an idea of right now. All we know is that at this point, when it comes to Kris Boyd himself, while all signs point to him getting better, not only was there a report from Adam Schefter yesterday, and I guess a conference with Aaron Glenn, and it mentioning that Kris Boyd was in great spirits and is going to make it out of the situation okay. That was yesterday. Little bit later in the night yesterday, Kris Boyd himself would post on Instagram that he, as this article states, has started to breathe on his own after being shot in Midtown Manhattan Sunday morning. End quote. And I mean, that's a tremendous thing. Because if this was as close of a call as it's being made out to have been right now, the fact that we're starting to now see some progress or hear about some progress, and the fact that he's able to regain some of that, some of these functions and simple mobilities, is definitely a promising sight. Because, I mean, all the articles mention that he, despite being a special teams ace, has not played a single game. He had already been out with a shoulder injury this season, in fact. So you just add another potentially devastating situation to his plate here with this. But, you know, if things continue to go the right way, it looks as though he can overcome this. And I mean, everybody's pulling for him. Absolutely. So that's definitely at least a brighter note to this one. They have, as well as this AP article states right here, let me see. Okay, hold on. See if I can find this real quick. Essentially, they had surveillance video out, as the AP article alludes to, of the actual incident in question, and they are currently looking for the person of interest as he fled the scene at this time. But it is going to be important to hear eventually, and that is truly going to be the next pivotal update. Also, with continuing to hear how Kris Boyd is progressing in this situation. Like, what happened? You have some people running with the narrative that this was a robbery, and again, you just don't know. It's hard to assume that. But something happened, and sooner or later, somebody's got to get to the bottom of it, right? And honestly, the development that I'm about to get to in pretty much just a few seconds, robbery, right? Okay. Lane Johnson, moving on to this, would suffer a Lisfranc injury and will be out for the next 4 to 6 weeks at least. Tough loss for the Eagles at this stretch of the season right now. It's not a season ender, and I think you can find some solace there at least. But he's still such a valuable player to that organization, and I could believe that they'll probably be feeling a little bit of that in some of these next few games. We'll see how they weather the storm there. Hopefully Lane Johnson takes that time to recuperate well. Emari Demercado is also out with a high ankle sprain. And for this incident right here in question, this is a report from Schefter as well that came out, and it just makes no sense. And I mean, you quite literally, in this time, as this came out, I can guarantee you that so many people who were so quick to just completely crap on Shedeur Sanders' performance, even though he, again, is a person who, if we understand that he hasn't been getting all these reps in the first place, was underprepared from the onset. And again, going up against that tough-ass defense in his first action, like, what exactly were you looking for here? And that's why I was saying, like, if you were going to start him officially, you wait until the game after. Which, before I even get into this particular report, good news for him, he actually will start the next game. So there is a silver lining to this at least, but it still doesn't excuse this bullshit from happening. Adam Schefter mentioned that as the game between the Browns and the Ravens was going on, across a 12-minute span in the afternoon, you had a group of robbers enter Sanders' home in Ohio and break into it, take a number of different things that were a number of things that were the equivalent of up to $200,000 in property. It was, they tried to make off with a good number of expensive things. And, I mean, this isn't far from the only time we've seen an NFL player be robbed blindly when they're not at home. I mean, even if we go a few years back, per se, we heard about Joe Burrow being away from home, having uncovering something pretty twisted in his romantic life as well at the same time. Nevertheless, that person was there in his home as this was happening, and that was a whole situation. Far from the only time it's happened. Like, I don't know what people necessarily get out of doing these things. I mean, at its face, like, we understand what it is. You're trying to make a quick buck and a quick lick off of an NFL player. So you're doing whatever it is you can, taking whatever you can away from them without a true struggle in play. Just doing it freely and swiftly as possible. That was the goal here. If they calculate the exact time they entered the home and exited the home with all of these different things and had a coordinated effort to make it happen. But it's just BS. It truly is. And one of the comments actually put it best. Because even without being alive for that much time when this incident initially happened, watching all the different stuff over the years, there is an understanding of how Sean Taylor ended up dying at his young age. As you had a group of robbers in that situation trying to enter his home, break into it, and take other pieces of property away from him that were definitely expensive, assuming that he wasn't there, and he ended up being there, trying to defend himself, and was taken away just like that. That is the exact reason that Sean Taylor died. And we still have this happening almost 2 decades later, essentially, is what that comment said. And I couldn't agree more. Like, what the hell? Gone far too soon doing, honestly, an honorable thing and trying to protect his family. Duh. But again, it's all about getting your money and your cut. Like, no, that just, like, come on, dude. Doesn't make any sense. It just really shows you how crazy things can truly be. I mean, damn. Like, whether he's there or not, granted, human nature is a completely different thing, but he should be able to be in his own space and feel safe there. I don't care how many times we've seen Shedeur Sanders, because, yeah, we've heard all the conversations about his quote-unquote braggadocio and things like that from all the different scouting combine information and things like that. Fine. We see him with the wrist flex stuff and everything like that. Different people calling him entitled and whatever other type of bullshit they want to spew out about him. And that's like, okay, that's your opinion. But even through all of that, he deserves to operate in his own space and feel some semblance of safety in his own home. Could you imagine what it is like as these days go on? The fact that things could have taken a different turn if he was there. And even if he wasn't. You had people infringe upon his property just because they thought they could make a quick buck off of him. Invaded his private space and property. Stepped in his house and took his things like that. Like, sure, he's a bit more mature at this point, but there is still just something about that as he goes back into this house and spends his time there that just ain't gonna feel right anymore. After some shit like that has already happened. So it's like damn. Okay. All right. Moving on to a few more developments here. CJ Stroud would be ruled out for his third straight game. He's still dealing with this concussion injury. And it's the right call. This game against the Bills is going to be absolutely tough no matter what. Like, even if CJ Stroud was back healthy. But even with his season, in terms of the output being in question a little bit, that's still your franchise guy. And it is the right decision. If he's not at 100%, just let him rest. Like, there's more value in him being fully healthy than trying to salvage something with a banged up quarterback back there. It is not worth it. The Saints are apparently set to play a game in Paris. And they're setting one up as early as 2026. Maybe a few other games down the line if that happens to go well. And it's like, to me, why the fuck do all the bad teams get the luxury of playing overseas? Why? Ironically enough, this year's slate of international games was actually the most watched in their history of running international games. So, I guess there's some credit there. But still, it's like, more often than not, you've had a few good teams play overseas. I'm not going to sit here and say that every single game has just been a complete dud in terms of international ones. But it's like, dude, in some of these cases, man, you are literally passing up great options of ball clubs to bring to these different markets just to showcase the absolute worst games imaginable to a wider audience. It blows my mind. And man, I guess even Saints fans, like, maybe some would want to go to Paris, but even they probably understand that it's like, dude, I don't know how they lucked into having this shit go down. Hey, how do they deserve this over other teams? It makes no sense. Joe Burrow has made in back-to-back days, per Adam Schefter reports, in back-to-back days, practice for the Bengals. Full participation would be the designation for him in both of these situations. Now, it was reported that he needed at least 3 months, and if they are trying this early to get him assimilated back into the flow of the game, there is a chance for the Bengals fans out there, even though it was looking a little drastic, there is a shot that he may have his return against the Patriots. There is a shot here. That's not out of the realm of possibility. It would be interesting. Like, when you look at the Bengals situation overall, I mean, they need to go on an absolute tear. They don't have much margin for error anymore. And this is the situation that you did not want in the event of Joe Burrow coming back. Now, granted, expected time was probably sometime in mid-December. But you're asking him in the next few games, if he does play on Sunday. I don't want to wholly assume that he's going to. But you have, over the next 4 games, the Pats, the Ravens twice, and the Bills. And you're expecting him to win, essentially, all 4 or at least 3 of the 4. And with the way that the AFC is shaping up, it doesn't even look as if the AFC North could afford to get in multiple teams right now. So, like, your best chance of making the playoffs, if you are Cincinnati, is to run the table against those teams. They have a bit of a lighter schedule down the stretch, but it's like, damn. And granted, it has been tough. They've been competitive in a good portion of their games, with the exception of last week. But you had to at least give yourselves a cushion for when Joe Burrow came back. Now you're putting a heavier burden on him, asking him to carry quite the load here and get this team into the playoffs. It is essentially no different from how it was last season. Fighting and clawing your way back to some not even just that, I would say false hope, honestly, clinging to false hope. Like, yes, teams have definitely done some crazy things in the second half of these seasons, but to go undefeated in this stretch and secure an above 500 record that way when you already have 7 losses on the board, that is difficult for anybody to do. I don't know how much success I would have. And again, that's only if Joe Burrow does play next week. And even then, with the way that defense is, there's no guarantee that they'll win. I don't know. But that would be interesting to see if he does return. The Browns would sign Alex Wright to a 3-year, $33 million contract extension. Not too familiar with who this is, to say the least. Not enough Browns football in the system. But hey, I mean, that's respect to the man. And to cap things off, Joe Mixon is essentially not expected to play this season. He opened up the season on IR and was scheduled to be out for a number of weeks. Initially, it was expected that he'd be back by sometime in week 10, and that hasn't happened at all. He has not even been called back up off IR at this point. And again, the season, we're past the halfway mark. We're sooner rather than later, we're starting to wind it down. So to expect him to play would be asking a lot at this point. And it just goes back to how some of these teams will just lead their fans on like that. Because you saying that Joe Mixon had a chance to return at least makes it seem like they will be able at some point in the season to watch him play. And he hasn't even taken a single snap on the field this year. You are giving little information in that sense about the full extent of his injury. And there may have been way more to it than you let on to your fan base. Definitely just tough to see that. But, well, is there anything else really quickly? Oh, man. You see? Yeah, I figured. Okay. Not going to take too much time with this one, but see what's on your screen. Sooner rather than later, it was going to come out that something led this duo of dynamic wide receivers to be benched for the first drive on Monday Night Football. I don't care what the fuck Brian Schottenheimer said after the game, talking about, oh, he loves those guys. And whatever the hell he tried to do to deflect the matter. No, nobody's buying that. Clearly something happened. And I mean, hey, for one of the few times, I suppose, what happened at Vegas did not stay in Vegas. Not at all. Like, man, hey, bro. Just, like, come, you can't make it up. You can't make it up. And yet they still went out there regardless of that and had massive ball games. Why was that the trend for this week? Why is everybody skipping meetings, gambling, sleeping in meetings like Abdul Carter did to be benched for the first drive of the game against the damn Packers? Like, what is going on? Lock the fuck in. I mean, even with CeeDee Lamb and Pickens doing this, leading up to the Raiders game, it's the Raiders. But you, if you're the Cowboys here, man, again, as that graphic showed, you have the fucking gauntlet over the next few weeks. Do you really think you can afford to be missing valuable time like this and getting into this kind of bullshit right now as a squad when you need to win some pretty tough games, whether at home or on the road? One of the tougher stretches that any team in the NFL will have for at least this 3 to 4 game span here. Like, holy shit. And you already to start off this season, man, you have to battle so far back into the race, you can't be wasting your time with this stuff. You can't afford to. But that'll do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.